this is to all of the native writers in the future, past and present, and in the future that I want you to share your world because I had the chance to share mine, and I hope that this kind of ripples out and continues for other people to make their space.
I'm Sarah, you know that. I'm Sarah Gould.
Hi, and my name's Nat Thornton, and we are both part of the Sacred Circle Book Club. This is going to be our second author interview. We're very excited. If you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Wasson. My Inipu Wetnikt is Tatmapza Ilchai. And I beam in to you from Tokyo, Japan. I'm from the Northwest in Idaho, specifically Lenore, Idaho, which is out there in the sticks. Um, but I'm really glad, I'm very happy to join you and talk with you today.
We are discussing your most recent book, I believe, Swallowed Light, a book of poetry, which is wonderful. I will say, if I do say so myself. But I was wondering, like, out of the seemingly, million and one different literary genres and subgenres and anything that you could choose to write from, do you know, like why did you choose to write poetry or become a poet specifically?
I think when I was younger, probably between 10 and 14 years old, I was really, really drawn towards lyrics, like music lyrics, and I had this habit of mishearing lyrics. And this habit of mishearing lyrics would make me like write misheard lyrics like into my homework margins and stuff. So I'd hear it one way, and then I would check it later on dial-up internet, and it would be a different lyric, but I would keep writing it or hearing it the same way. So I remember in middle school when I came back home, I think I must have been 14 years old. Um, I would write Black Sabbath lyrics in the margins, and one of my teachers said, "Wow, great poem." And I was like, huh, is this that was I didn't we I never had like a class or anything or an activity where we did specifically poetry unless it was like a one-off thing once a year. Um, but that kind of turned into like a little hobby. And then poetry for me was a combination of music and language.
There is The Exile or Gather Up the Bones and Arrange Them Well. Those were two that came to mind. How did the formatting of those poems affect how it was intended to be read?
I always use formatting or form as kind of a way to describe how you breathe and how you take in something through like a cup or through a vase or through um, sort of something's shape, right? They're taking into account just like how I breathe and how I'm reading them aloud.
Mm.
Um, so when people give me comments or they talk to me about how I read my poetry, which is kind of rare because I don't give a lot of readings. Um, but I do kind of like use my breath and use silence as a way to understand where the poem wants me to pause and let drama fill and let the language charge and the language rest. So if you see these poems and they're stopping or there's a lot of white space, it's like my brain works in a weird way where I hear it sort of echo or reverb, and that's what we kind of consider the breath of the line.
But I guess I was curious as to who you were writing to, if there was someone or anyone specific in mind.
If I can connect with some one person out there, if I can make somebody breathe a little easier or help them feel seen once somewhere, then to me that's a success. So I always felt like my audience was kind of, you know, a peppering of people just across any number of countries that just maybe struggles with understanding their fractured relationship with language, or um, learning about their language. People who deal with sort of feeling isolated but still wanting to reach back towards home. Like those are really the people that I feel like, especially my earlier poetry here, um, was kind of hoping to engage with.
Then I had a question about the title of your most recent book, Swallowed Light, and like where that came from.
Our creation story. And the creation story is Coyote and the monster. That's how the Nez Perce people, Nimipu people, were created. And there's this act where in the story, Coyote has to get somehow into the monster's body. And in Nez Perce language and in English, he says like something along the lines of like, swallow me whole, right? The bod that he like covers himself in all of these things and equips himself with these knives, and it's like this sort of adventurous episode, right? But he says that in working with the stories when I was 19, 18, 19 years old, I kind of had that image still like branded in the back of my brain. Like whenever I wrote about sort of more myth-oriented, story-oriented poems, I always had this image that in order for our creation to be triggered, right, that Coyote had to be swallowed somehow. And so I kind of saw Coyote, who is our sort of mythic trickster figure, is sort of the grandfather of us all, right? And so that act of swallowing is how the light of the stories, light of the people, and then when Coyote goes into the monster's body, he has to build this fire to create smoke, right? And so that like literally in the story is like this sort of act of creating light within the body.
Has anyone ever come to you with like discomfort of not being able to access those things or not knowing everything or not being able to understand the language or like and how did that go down, I guess?
I learned throughout my life that when I enjoy something completely, I'm not entirely like asking a lot of questions. I'm just sort of like in it, right? So if I'm just in it and I'm hearing and I'm with a poem, or I'm with somebody's reading of a poem, or with a book, it's just me listening in a room to that person or to that book or that work. And for me, I felt like poetry and writing in general was a way for me to speak specifically who I am to people in all of their contexts. And so for me, like the book itself was, um, I was I think protective is a good word, because I was protective of being too accessible. I wanted to give people the experience of discomfort in a very comfortable way,
Mm-hmm.
right? That like if you're going to experience immersion, or if you're going to go to ceremony, or if you're going to go to, I don't know, a powwow somewhere, or if you're going to go to somebody's dinner on the res, there's going to be a lot of information coming at you, and you're not going to be able to sit down and grasp everything that's coming at you, right? And so for me, I think protective is a really good word, because there are times when I would want to use the language, I would want to use Nimi Pritimpt, but I so didn't want to explain it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I didn't want to like sit down and like have like a translation or footnotes or whatever. And so at some point I stopped. In this book I'm reading where they're code switching with Spanish, they're not explaining it. And I love that mystery. I love being in that and just not like, I feel like there's some responsibility put on me when I'm reading that. I'll like read Eduardo C. Corral's work, and he's been a great guide for me, and sort of really good friend as well. who's always asking me like, or not asking me, telling me like, you can always ask me if you want help or, anything in the writing world. Um, and for me, it was just like, yes, I want my, not audience, I want the reader to just really sit with Nimiputimpt as if, when we heard it when we were younger in these fractures, or like we go to ceremony or we go to a funeral and they're speaking English to us and they suddenly switch into Nimiputimpt, and I'm just like, and we never question it. It's just like we kind of understand it through context and we learn it as part of our culture. And that fracturing or that discomfort became a comfort for us.
What do you feel, or what do you think is being carried on, or whether it's pieces from the past that are brought to the present, or pieces of what is now that will become the past into the future, or anything?
Bringing the past in order to understand and build a better future. And I think just the idea of like futurism is that like the future is going to be, we're going to be understanding of all of these different stories, these different approaches to poetry, understanding like the space is getting more like in not I don't want to say like inclusive as a buzzword, but just like I feel like the future is going to be queerer. It's going to be like it's going to give us chances for languages. It's going to give us a chance to like share our language and how our past and our history and our um I, I would say like our struggles to be who we are is given this wonderful sort of soft space that we can now just exist in. And to me, that's kind of like what poetry does. That this book form, these poems, and this, grafted to the spine is like where at the time, I was like really comfortable that I could finally share this with the world. So carrying on through that is going to hopefully give artists and writers in the future that same comfort to share their world.
I think this applies to any sort of artistic person, whether they're writing or creating like illustrations or comics, whatever the case is. When people tell you no, don't let that discourage you. Keep creating through the rejections. That love in